Good evening. I'm Dr. Bosh P. Jordan Jr., the pastor and founder of Hope Alive Outreach, and we're here today to give a message of hope to persons who suffer from the disease of addiction, primarily drugs and alcohol. I'm the Hope Doctor, and we're here to give you some hope. Tell your friends, your relatives, your neighbors, especially if you have a friend or a relative or a neighbor that you believe needs some help regarding addiction to drugs or alcohol. Or maybe you might have a family member who wants to know how do you deal with addiction? How do you deal with a loved one who is an addict or an alcoholic? We do hope and pray that we'll be able to have something said today that will benefit you and give you some hope. If you'd like to send a donation to us here at Hope Alive Outreach or to the Hope Doctor, you can send it to one of the places that we have on the screen that's coming up. Your donation that you have for us can be sent to PayPal, or it can be sent to Cash App. That's $ the Hope Doctor, $ the Hope Doctor. Or you can go to our website. There it is right there. Our website is hopealiveoutreach.org. That's hopealiveoutreach.org. And we also have, you can mail a check to Hope Alive Outreach right here at Post Office Box 35427, St. Petersburg, Florida, 33705. And you see we have Givelify and PayPal. So, and we do have something very nice to give to you. If you have make a donation of over $15, very nice pen. And on the pen, it says Hope Alive Outreach and the address, the telephone number, and also our website. It's a very nice pen, and on the end of it, you can use it on your computer and your iPhone. So whatever you do, please help us to give some other individuals hope. We also have something brand new, something. We have a T-shirt. That's right. We have a T-shirt, the Hope Doctor T-shirt. And this T-shirt, you can get this T-shirt for $23.95 by going to our website, to hopealiveoutreach.org, hopealiveoutreach.org, and you will definitely be sowing a seed into our outreach ministry. Today, our topic is men in recovery. Men in recovery. We have two gentlemen who are supposed to be here today. One, his name is Anthony, and he's from St. Petersburg, Florida. The other one is Brother Gary, and Gary is with us today. Gary, how you doing?
I'm doing well, Dr. Bosh.
And we have as our co-host Nicole. You know, Nicole is here in St. Pete. Hi, Nicole, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing excellent. Tell us a little bit about yourself, Gary. You know, how you got into recovery, how long you been in recovery before we get into men in recovery.
Sure. Well, after using drugs and in the program I'm in, alcohol is a drug too, for over 30 years of my life and being so miserable, I finally surrendered and went to my job and asked them for some help, and they sent me to treatment. And that was April 2nd, 2002. And I went to treatment for 14 days, got out of there, went to see a counselor, and I started going to meetings. And I've been improving in my life ever since. I've been clean and in recovery now for like 19 years. And tomorrow I'll claim that 19 years and 5 months.
Okay. What were you saying about you went into a treatment center, a 14-day treatment center back in 2002?
Yes.
Okay. And was that treatment center, did they deal with just drugs, or did they deal with alcohol and drugs?
Both. They deal with alcohol and drugs.
And one of the things that you just mentioned was alcohol is a drug. And our literature says that many people have been confused about this. How has being in recovery changed you as a man?
Oh man, tremendously. But Dr. Bosh, it's a difference between being clean and being in recovery. Being clean is just, being abstinent, not using drugs. And but being in recovery is like it's a 12-step program, and I practice these spiritual principles embedded in the steps. And when I do that to the best of my ability, my life is so much better. My thinking is better. My perception of things is better. I process situations better by applying the spiritual principles in the steps.
Now you've been in recovery now for 19 years. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
And how old were you when you came into recovery? When you came into this fellowship?
I think I was like, man, I think I was, oh, yeah, good question. I was 44 years old when I came into recovery.
So that means you're 39 now.
I'm 63 now.
Really? Well, that's
Yes.
that's a real blessing. A real blessing.
Yes.
And since you've been in recovery, you've gotten into a 12-step program. And matter of fact, I've known you, I think, ever since you came into recovery. Isn't that right?
Yes, you have.
Yeah. So that's been 19 years. So if somebody's getting older, I don't know whether or not it's you. Okay. I don't know whether or not it's you or me. What's the difference between you being a man in recovery and a man who's in active addiction?
Okay, let me go with the man in active addiction. When I was in active addiction, I was a shell of a man, right? I just pretty much exist. You know, I had a wife and kids, but I just being in active addiction, it's like you can't participate in life as a human being. Active addiction just controlled my ever being. When I was around them, all I was thinking about is leaving them and going to get drugs. You know what I mean? I owned a house. It was like I was going through life with the world on my shoulders. It was just so much pressure. I was a very miserable human being. You understand? But since I got in recovery,
What was your drug of choice?
More.
More. Okay.
I'm telling you, more, man. Alcohol, heroin, weed, dope, heroin, coke, pills, whatever I get my hand on to make me just feel, quote unquote, I thought normal. Whatever I can get my hand on, I would use.
Yeah. You mentioned alcohol. Nicole, how have you seen alcohol change lives of men that you've seen in sobriety?
I mean, countless ways, really. I've seen it bring families back together. You know, I have seen men who at one point couldn't hold down a job or couldn't finish school, go back to school and get, you know, their bachelor's and master's degrees. I've seen, we talk about this a lot in the rooms, but you literally see a person's face and demeanor change, you know, as the light kind of comes in, and we see that all the time.
We call it a glow.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, if I can remember, they say that after 30 days, then you get what is the word that I want to use, Gary? You've got that. It's like
they call it pink cloud too, Dr. Basha. You be on a pink cloud, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Because after you're sober and clean for a while, like Nicole says, your aura changes, your complexion changes. Normally, you begin to put on weight.
Yes.
And at times, I believe maybe it happens at different levels, but we begin to treat others in a different way. Nicole had mentioned things happening in families. Let's talk a little bit about how it has changed your family life.
Oh man, for instance, you know, I was in recovery. I think it was 2010, so maybe I had like about 8 years clean in recovery. My mother passed away, right, and we wasn't really prepared for that financially. And I was in recovery for 8 years, and I was doing better for my life. So I went to my job, and so I had a 401k, and went to my 401k for a hardship, and managed to bury my mother in a really nice way, man. I felt really proud that I was available to do that. You know, being in recovery, you know, you be available for things as opposed to active addiction. I wasn't available. You know, I'm coming, but I would never make it. I'll be there, but I will never make it. All these false promises. But in recovery, if I say I'm gonna do something, most of the times I'm going to do it.
In other words, it sounds like you have become more trustworthy, more responsible.
Definitely.
Um, describe how other men in recovery have helped you.
Oh man, so much. You know, I don't know. In active addiction, you isolate from people. You make it you force yourself to pretend like you don't need no one. But in recovery, unity is so important. One of my sponsors, since I've been here, he said the the sheep that get attacked by the wolf is the one that strays away from the pack. And how I look at that is it's important that I unite around men and like transfer information. You know what I mean? Just talk to each other in a helpful way. If one of them is going through something, they call me, and I don't have to have the solution. A lot of times, all you have to do, Dr. Basha, is just listen to people. What I find when you listen to people, if you just listen to them by them talking, sometimes they'll hear the solution while they're talking. You know what I mean? So it's just being available. And real quick, man, since I've been in recovery for this last year, about 6 months, I'm in this bike riding club, and it's like maybe from once a week on Sundays we get together on Sundays and ride bikes. It goes from like 5 guys to maybe 15 guys. You know what I mean? And all the guys are in recovery, and we get together and have a nice, pleasant bike ride. It's so much fun. You never could tell me when I was in active addiction that you can have fun being clean and being in recovery.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love it.
Yes, indeed. Yeah. My wife just reminded me about what it is. After 30 days, they say you got that glow.
Yes.
It's a glow that we get. Nicole, why don't you jump in there, because I'm quite sure you have something on your mind that you can relate to as a woman when it looks at men in recovery.
I'm going to ask you to restate the question.
I'm just wondering about your thoughts on men in recovery over against women in recovery.
Okay. Well, it's kind of a personal topic. My dad has been in recovery. He's unfortunately not at the moment, but he has been, and I was able to, the change in him was drastic and something that I never thought that I would see. And, I've gained friends in recovery, some of which are men, and it's amazing to me the kind of support system that they build around themselves for them and others. It's amazing to me how, all of those things, the honesty and the integrity are restored, and they become this kind of beacon of light for other men in recovery. I know from a women's perspective, pride can be an issue sometimes. It's hard to admit that we have a problem. And I see with men, like when they are willing to be vulnerable and admit to these things and speak on it, it invites that kind of thing in. It brings other men into it too. And it really does restore families and relationships and friendships and, fatherhood. And it's a beautiful thing.
One of the foundations of recovery is spirituality. As a matter of fact, I believe that once we do a step one and make and admit we're powerless over our addiction, and I'm so glad that you mentioned about, and I said this before, that alcohol is a drug, because I didn't realize that until I got into recovery. I thought that alcohol was out there on a limb by itself, that was something I could resort to. As a matter of fact, I'm in the process of writing my second book. And about an hour ago, I was talking about how it was in the end where I stopped using cocaine and resorted to alcohol. But the difference between alcohol and cocaine is that cocaine takes you up, but alcohol brings you down where you lose your senses. But spirituality in recovery begins with that third step. And let's talk about that a little bit. How a higher power in your life has made your life better, Gary?
Oh, definitely, and it's all about Dr. Boucher, the spiritual principles in the steps. I can share this experience. a year and I'm retired now. I'm retired from work in 2018, and I was just enjoying life, right? And when COVID-19 hit a year and a half ago, when it hit, and it was shutting things down, and you couldn't go a lot of places, and you couldn't gather with people. I took that as a personal, situation where in my mind I was like, how dare they? You know what I mean? It's like I was really upset about how the cities was getting shut down and a lot of places was closing and you couldn't do certain things. And when I stopped and prayed, you got to do a lot of praying and recovery for me anyway. And I applied the steps. And the first step was, Gary, you powerless over that COVID-19, right? And the second step was, you are going insane thinking about this thing that you can control stuff. So I had to be restored to sanity and realize that I can only do what I can do and leave the rest up to God, right? And I went to the third step to turn my will over to the care of God as I understand Him. Things got so much better. Now, before I was in recovery, I would not be able to process things like that. You know what I mean? The steps give me peace because the solution to all my problems are in the steps and in the spiritual principles embedded in the steps.
Garrett, were you raised up in the church, or do you have experiences in being in the church?
Well, kind of be honest. My mother was from down south, and so when we moved up here in Baltimore, she would have us to go to church. But I was mischievous. I was very mischievous. Like they say in the program, some of us had problems before we took drugs. And I can identify with that because I wasn't taking drugs. She would send us to church and give us money to put inside the basket. I would sneak off and go to the stores and buy candy and be in the church eating my candy. You see what I'm saying? I wasn't paying attention to that stuff, man. I was very undisciplined. You know what I'm saying? I really was. But she embedded it in us about, God and all that good stuff and Jesus. And I knew about that, but I didn't really apply that.
So what would you say is the main difference between the God of the church and the higher power in the 12-step program? And I think either one of you all, we can elucidate on that. Go ahead.
That's a good question. See, the program I'm in, it's a spiritual program. It's not a religious program. Like when I grew up, the God that I served, they said it was a punishing God. You understand? They said if you lie and you cheat and you steal, you're just going to go to hell and be to hell for the rest, for your eternity, right? But when I got in this program and got a relationship to the God of my understanding, right, who I call God, who is my higher power, He's loving, He's caring, He's patient, He's tolerant. You know what I mean? It's nothing bad about Him. All of His personalities, it's all good. It's no bad. You see what I'm saying? He's a forgiving God. You understand? He's not a punishing God. He's a forgiving God. That's the big difference in recovery and the God that I knew before recovery.
Yeah. Well, I'm so glad that you mentioned that because I was raised up in the church. And you mentioned Jesus and God, and I used to sneak out of church every night. And my father was a pastor, so him being up in the pulpit and me sitting down, he could see if I went out, but I would pretend I was going to the bathroom or something, But I'd be in the back in the church, pulling the girls' hairs and talking and making airplanes and that sort of thing. But at the same time, there was something that was seeping into my spirit. So even though when I was out there using, I knew I was doing something that I had not been trained to do. Nicole, when we talk about alcohol and men in our society today, how do you view alcohol and men who are drinking over against men who are in recovery?
Well, if we're talking about men who probably have a drinking problem out in the world, and and comparing them to men in recovery, it's men who are in recovery that have programs that can do the things that Gary was talking about, can reason through situations, can rely on something bigger than themselves to help them get through, that have a network of people that they can go to when they're, struggling with something or dealing with something. I say it all the time for men and women that the 12 steps is this incredible design for living that I really think everybody should, would love to. I don't know. I'm just grateful that we have it because it is a design for living. It's a way to keep, honesty and integrity intact. And that's kind of one of the main differences that I see. The respect, the honesty, the integrity, willingness, which is huge, not just willingness within the program, but outside of it. Those are the things that men gain within recovery that they don't necessarily have outside of it.
And Dr. Boss, can I share something really quick?
Yes, sure.
Something real profound. Like Nicole said, I have a sponsor, right? And I have sponsees, people that I guide through the 12 steps. And I was struggling with one of my sponsees about his behavior, right? And I went to my sponsor and talked to him about my struggles. And it was so profound how my sponsor helped me. He said, Gary, in your situation that you're struggling with, just ask yourself, what would God do? And when he said that, it was no longer a struggle.
And so, what did you do?
I did what God would do. I started supporting that brother. I stopped judging him. I stopped thinking that he should do this and he should do that, and allow him to be who he is. And remember who I am and who I'm not.
Yeah.
I can't change them. I have to change myself.
Yes. Yes. And that brings to mind, because I've been in recovery now, it'll be 33 years October, that raising children, especially my son, he would get in some situations, and then he would get in another situation, and I would judge him. But then about 5 years, he's 35 now. But then about 5 years ago, he did something, and I went to judge him on that and tell him what he should. When all of a sudden something clicked, and I remembered that I had done the same thing. And so since then, I have tried to be more supportive of my son and my daughter, and allowing them as much as possible to come to their own realization of how their lives should go. But at the same time, I believe as a father that my children are watching what I do rather than paying so much attention to what I say. My father didn't say a whole lot. He was not a loving and caring man. He took care of us. He was always there. But he showed me how to be a man. He showed me how to utilize money. He showed me how to save money. And at the same time, he also showed me how to stay married, because he stayed married to my mother. How have you seen men's lives change as far as their family life is concerned, Nicole?
I've seen them become more present, in their relationships, but also with their children. I've seen them want to strive to be better. We talk a lot in recovery about repeating patterns. A lot of us repeat the patterns of, like you're talking about, the people that come before us. I see a lot of men wanting to stop those patterns in their tracks, stop it with them, and do a little better and make make a new pattern, you know, something more healthy. I see them becoming willing and able to sustain a home and a family, and whatever that, you know, whatever way that looks like. And I see them just having more like gratitude and reverence for the families that they've been given and really showing that through their actions.
Yes. Yeah. Gary, you have children.
Yes, I have two, a son and a daughter.
Has your fatherhood changed since you've been in recovery over against how you used to be?
Most definitely, most definitely. You know, I'm more understanding now. You know what I mean? Our literature says, you know, a lot of times instead of us forcing our views on people, you know, we should just sit still and allow them to come to us and ask us for help. You know, I remember my daughter was going through a situation with one of her boyfriends, and I didn't say too much about it, as long as it didn't get physical. I was fine. But one day, she called me and asked me for my advice on the situation, and that made me feel so much better. You know what I mean? My son, he's gay, right? And when I grew up, you know, we had issues with that. I mean, really strong issues with that. But the man in recovery now, I learned to accept him for who he is. You understand? I know I can't change him, but I'm here for him. You know what I mean? I text him every now and again to see how he's doing. We have an okay relationship. It could be better, but we went through some changes. It caused a little damage to it, but I'm praying on that, and hopefully it'll get better.
Yeah. And speaking of children, I believe that the men that our daughters are attracted to are men like their father. I think it was one of the psychiatrists, Freud, Sigmund Freud, I believe it was, said it was called the Oedipus complex, whereas the son is secretly in love with the mother, and the daughter is secretly in love with the father. The son wants to move the father out of the way so he can have the mother, and the daughter wants to move the mother out of the way so she can be with the father. Because I have an altogether different relationship with my daughter than I do with my son. Now, Nicole, you have children. Is that conversely? Can you understand what I'm doing?
I have two boys, and it's no secret with my smallest one now. He'll tell my husband to just please remove yourself from the situation.
Really? And
yeah,
he's 5.
He'll be 5 in 3 weeks.
Really?
Mm.
And with no hesitation, he'll say that to his father.
Oh yeah.
It's you know, children today are not like the children when we were coming up.
No.
I think that our parents were more religious.
Mm-hmm.
Our parents were more caring, had more integrity. And they instilled that in us. Last Sunday, I was listening to this preacher, and he was saying that the millennials have ruined Generation X.
Right.
Generation X. No. The baby boomers. I'm a baby boomer.
Mm-hmm.
But my children. Our children are the Generation X. Millennials. They're the millennials. But the millennials ruined Generation X because the millennials didn't teach the Generation X about love, about godliness, about integrity.
Mm-hmm.
The baby. So often, I think the baby boomers were the ones who really got into drugs.
Mm-hmm.
Hippies, you know, smoking pot in public and all that sort of thing. I mean, when I was coming up, a woman wouldn't dare smoke a cigarette in public.
Mm-hmm.
You know, women didn't wear pants. They wore dresses. We didn't hear women cursing. I mean, nowadays, man, I mean, women are cursing in their songs. What's the lady's name? Who sings? This is so popular.
Megan Thee Stallion.
Cardi B.
Cardi B.
Oh my goodness, the things that Cardi B says, and the language that's even mentioned and used by male rappers.
Mm-hmm.
To me, it's total disrespect
Mm-hmm.
for themselves. I mean, when I was coming up, I would never call a woman a B, not to her face, unless I was, I might have been high or something or halfway drunk. But today, I've heard men refer to women as a B, and the women, like it's nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Explain that, Nicole. What is that?
I am a millennial, but I don't condone that stuff.
Yeah.
I don't have any explanation. I don't know.
I mean, I just think that we have allowed too much in our society. Allowed it too much to happen without consequences. And even in the school system.
Mm-hmm.
The majority of the individuals who are in the school system, the teachers, are females. And here, as well as in Baltimore, the teachers don't have that much control in the classroom of the children. Matter of fact, a lot of teachers have quit.
Right.
But I think that those of us, the men in recovery, have become more responsible,
mm-hmm.
and that our responsibilities have increased at home.
Right.
That's my training ground.
Yeah.
At home with my wife, when I go to visit my children. I mean, it's kind of odd me calling my 35-year-old son a child. He's my child. I mean, I wouldn't call him a child, and my daughter, but they are my children. They're not my adults. I don't call my adults this, but they are adults.
Mm-hmm.
So I believe that those of us who are in recovery have more responsibility today after we get into recovery, after we become sober. What do you all think about that?
Yeah, I agree with that 100%, Dr. Basha. As a matter of fact, I was talking to someone, and they had kids, and they said their kids was like, 30, 35, 25, and he asked his kids, why do he think the kids are the way they are today? And he said, his young son said, the reason why we are the way we are is because of y'all. Y'all generation was full of drugs, and y'all wasn't taking responsibility for us. And think about that. When the crack era hit, how the parents wasn't at home anymore and the kids had to fend for themselves. And now this is a direct result of that. I'm not saying it's 100% true, but I would think it has something to do with that.
The wreckage of our
There you go.
Now we have to deal with it. I mean, my son curses like he's drinking water. And so I had to address him about that. I said to him, if you want to use that kind of language, please don't use it around me. And no matter how old my children get, I'm still their father. And I'm going to demand a certain amount of respect. As a matter of fact, I believe that spiritual men and women demand a certain amount of respect, even without opening their mouth.
Mm.
Nicole mentioned about how our aura changes. You said something like that. I know that my father could look at me a certain way, and I knew I better get it right. Were you all raised like that?
Yes, most definitely. In my home, it was like you do what I say, not what I do. You know what I mean? And when adults was talking, the kids wasn't allowed to come around the adults. I grew up in the city, and when we would see an older person, the kids would we was acting up. We would see an older person, we would automatically stop acting up just out of respect for the older person. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it was much different when I was coming up as opposed to the way it is now.
What responsibility do we as recovering men have for this generation that we are confronting today, this generation that we have to deal with today? I mean, what do you do when you see a young man or middle-aged man with his pants down below his buttocks?
Me myself, I try to lead by example for one, right? And some of these young guys, Dr. Basha, I wouldn't say I'm afraid of them, but you have to be careful and mindful how you approach them. Right. So what I do myself when I'm in the midst of one of them, and for instance, when I'm getting ready to go into a store or something, and they hold the door for me, right? I'll politely say, "Man, thank you very much, young man. I appreciate that." I give them little comments, compliments, and encouragements along the way, because maybe they're not used to getting that, but that's what I try to do. I try to treat them how I would want to be treated.
What are your thoughts on that, Nicole? Because you have to deal with the women. I mean, yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, I don't know. I am a millennial. So I feel a little differently. I mean, I was, the child whose parents were in the streets. And I was lucky, though, because I have grandparents that stepped in. And they are the grandparents that, you guys are talking about. They both demanded respect. And to this day, I hold them very dear to my heart and everything that they taught me. And it wasn't until I became a mother that their lessons really hit home with me, and I really understood what they were talking about. I don't know. As far as dealing with women, I believe that what's going on, we talk a lot about extremes in recovery, where we tend to be people of extremes. And what I see going on is an extreme of years and decades and whatever's of just repression. So I think it'll level out sooner or later.
Okay, we're going to pause here for a moment. I'm Dr. Bosh P. Jordan Jr., pastor and founder of Hope Alive Outreach, and we're here today giving a message of hope to persons who suffer from the disease of addiction, primarily drugs and alcohol. We have as our guest Brother Gary from Baltimore. We also have Sister Nicole, who is our co-host. And today, I'd just like to share with you the importance of sowing into this outreach, so that we might continue to bring a message of hope. People call me from all over the world, all over the United States, and I try to give them some hope. And so, if you could sow a seed into our outreach, that would be greatly appreciated. Greatly appreciated. You can donate through Cash App or PayPal, through Givelify, make your checks payable to Hope Alive Outreach. As a matter of fact, I'm quite sure that you can put our phone number in there for Zelle or the name of our organization, Hope Alive Outreach, so that we might be able to continue our outreach and our ministry. Not only do I counsel individuals, but I also get persons in the detox, into treatment, and also do one-on-one conversations with individuals, especially when they request it, because people know what I do and why I do that. My whole purpose in life is to give hope to people who suffer from the disease of addiction, primarily drugs and alcohol. Also, we have a pen that a new pen that we have out. And this pen is on it. It has the name of our outreach, which is Hope Alive Outreach. in the post office box address, and also the telephone number and our website, which is hopealiveoutreach.org. Now, if you want to get one of these pens free, just send us a donation of $15 or more, and you get one of these free. Also, we have a new item, which is our T-shirts. Now, T-shirts say the Hope Doctor on the front, and if my producer can get it a little larger, there it is, right there. There's a handsome black man who's wearing that shirt. Let me see. Yes, it says the Hope Doctor. That's our symbol right there with our website, www.hopealiveoutreach.org. I'm also on Facebook 5 days a week, giving a dose of hope, 3 to 5 minutes for anyone who feels as though they need it. And we do ask you, we'll ask you if you will check us out. Go to our website.
Clay,
We have
having questions.
okay.
Clay,
We have a friend of mine, Clay, is asking a question. Let me see.
okay.
Okay, says Dr. Jordan, do you think that there is a disparity between older and younger men in recovery? Can you elaborate on some of the differences? Do you think there's a disparity between older men and younger men in recovery? Let's look at that for a moment. I will throw that out to you, Gary.
That's a good question. Let me see. I would think the older guys in recovery, we seem to be more settled in. You know what I mean? More settled into our recovery and more of a family man, more family oriented. The younger guys, sometimes when they come into recovery and see the older guys, because I can somewhat relate to this too, you think that you still have opportunities. Maybe you should, go back out and come back in later because you see the older guys. But if you lock into this program and really get out of it what you need, you'll stay. And eventually they come around. But being younger, you just want to do more. You know what I mean? You want to do more and be involved in more. I see the younger guys, and the older guys is just a lot more laid back.
Yeah, I see that Lois. As a matter of fact, you know Lois very well. She's commenting here. Lois and Lois, if you'd like to ask a question, and also Kim Davis Bond is on there. She likes the teaching that we're doing here. I think that the older men have more responsibility to show the younger men the way. I believe that that's our main responsibility, because quiet as it's kept, younger men, if you live long enough, you're going to get older. And I can remember when I used to look at people with gray hair and people who were walking slow, and I used to think that was, a category that I didn't even have to worry about. But then I just kept on living.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I kept on living, and I had become an older man. I considered myself. I started considering myself to be an older man when I hit 40. I don't know what that sounds like, but I did. Nicole, what do you think is the difference between the older men and the younger men in recovery? Well, while you're thinking about that, what comes to my mind is that the younger men are more promiscuous, because you can get in recovery, and when you stop drinking and stop using drugs, then you start resorting to other behaviors more often. Okay. We have, Ivania Chapman says, yes, because I work with men from age 21 to 63. The older guys still have some issues that haven't been dealt with when it comes to trauma. So they allow their ego to affect the way they deal with younger guys. Thank you, Ivana, for that. Egos. And you know what they said, an EGO is easing God out.
Right.
Right. I'd have to agree, because I think I fall into that category. Because sometimes I think that because of my age and because I've been around for a while, a few 24 hours that I might know more than what I really know. Roger's on there. Roger saying a lot of young men don't know their choices. Thank you so much for that.
Mhm.
Thank you. They don't know their choices. Come on, let's respond to that. Roger from Baltimore.
Yeah, well, I sponsored several young men since I've been in recovery, and when you get in recovery, it's a suggestion, right, to like stay out of a relationship for a year. But I read somewhere in the literature that that's one of the most talked about suggestions. Let's listen to the less. So a lot of the younger guys, they get into relationships, and when they get into the relationships, a lot of times they put the relationships before their recovery. And that creates a big issue for the younger guys, I've noticed since I've been here. Because when you talk to them, that's pretty much all they talk about is the relationship with the opposite sex. Like you were saying, Dr. Basha, they're promiscuous and they get involved in a lot of that. But if they continue to stay, they can grow, because I've seen a lot of them grow as well.
Yes. Yeah. Well, one, and maybe Kim can comment on this. But when I got into recovery, I found out that my spirituality and my sexuality can run neck and neck. After doing a third step, I became more spiritually conscious. But when I stopped using a drink or a drug, I also became more sexually conscious. And thank God I was married, and thank God I am married. But I've seen a lot of people destroy their recovery by placing a relationship in the rooms of Narcotics Anonymous or in the rooms of AA. The relationship gets above their recovery or their sobriety. Mm-hmm. Why do women always come after us? Come after us men in recovery, Nicole?
You might be making that up.
Well, I could turn it around. Why is it that the older women go after the younger men in sobriety, in recovery? I mean, today, it's just wild. I heard a preacher last Sunday say that grown men, will be in a relationship with a woman and call them mama, and the woman will call him baby. Now, if you listen to that, that's real. So, Nicole, I'm throwing it at you.
Look, I'm not the one to ask, though, because I've been with the same man since I was 19 years old before I got sober. So I have no idea.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, Ivana is saying, because today some young men do know their choices. They have more information coming in today than you guys had. You guys took a while to show emotion, and the younger guys show emotion straight in the door, and the older guys call them weak. That's a comment from one of our listeners.
Mm-hmm.
Now Lois is saying, many men, can you all see that?
Yes.
Many men have had no model for healthy relationships. Discouragement growing up adds to it as well. Hey, boy, oh boy. Encouragement.
Mm-hmm.
My father used to encourage me with the paddle on my behind.
Mm-hmm.
And he used to slap me with his hand. I used to, I had to stay, I always stayed 6 feet away from my father. Wherever his arms could reach, I stayed arm's length away from him, because that was his way of disciplining. He didn't play. But I think that fathers and husbands today need to know how to be, and you talked about this earlier, Gary, more empathetic.
Yes. And also, I want to say too, in recovery, Dr. Basha, we have meetings called Men Raps, where men can gather. It's just men gathering, talking about men's situations and responsibilities and relationships and everything. And I think that's very, very helpful for young
Yes.
men. In recovery, you get what you want. If you want certain things, you can get it in recovery, but you
That's
have to want it and seek it out.
Yeah. Roger's saying, I didn't learn how to be a father or a husband until I started hanging around other husbands, fathers, and men.
Yes.
Yes. My daddy used to say, what you do sounds so loud, I can't hear what you say.
Mhm.
I remember when I first came around, there was a guy named Richard Lewis who had, I don't know, when I first came around, he had 25 years, something like that. And he had gray hair. I had black hair when I first came around. And Richard Lewis didn't say a whole lot. But when he spoke, I mean, he might tell you, sit the so-and-so down. What did I do? What did I do, Gary?
Sit down.
I sat down. So the younger men can learn something from older men who are practicing spiritual principles in their lives.
Yes.
Let me see, what other comments? Who was just talking about abuse? Okay, Ivana, it says abuse that was traumatizing. Thank God for 12-step process. Abuse, yes. Roger said, I didn't grow up with a father in my house. That's one of the drawbacks today. So many women are raising their children by themselves.
Right.
Nicole, I believe that your children are blessed. I know they're blessed because they got mama and daddy in the house.
Yeah, neither of us grew up with our fathers.
Right.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
What was that like?
I mean, I had issues from the beginning. I always wondered, my situation is a little interesting too, in that I have two half sisters that my father did raise. So there was a lot of hurt and hardship there. We were lucky though, because we had my grandparents, like I stated before. They weren't only like a physical presence in our lives. They, helped my mom out a lot. My husband's story is a little different. He didn't have that. So his mom worked 3 jobs and he was essentially raised by his brothers. And that was very difficult for him. But my husband decided somewhere along the line that that's not what he wanted for himself or his children when he had them. So he's been, present and learning. But he's learning now too, especially this year. COVID did a lot of things.
Mm.
One of the things, though, it did was sit us all down in our houses for long, extended periods of time. And what that did was kind of put a mirror up to him and to me and show us the things that we needed to work on as parents. And I'm with you, Basha. My kids are really lucky because I don't know that many men who will sit there and look at their issues and work on them outside of recovery. And my husband is not in recovery. He's a normal human being somehow.
Okay. Lois says, Gary, how did that affect you growing up without a father in the house?
Yeah, I grew up without a father in the house, but I had an older brother, and I kind of looked at him as my father because he took responsibility for me. And I don't know, man, just growing up, I knew in my heart of hearts that I wanted kids. And when I had kids, I would give them what I didn't get. And that just helped me so much with fatherhood. You know what I mean? I just wanted to support them the way I wasn't supported. You know what I mean? As a father. And that just helped me out so much because a young lady saw me once and she knew where I grew up and she was like, Gary, I never knew that you would be the kind of father that you are to your children based on how you grew up.
Yes. One of the greatest things that we as fathers can give to our children is love.
Yes.
And one of the greatest assets of being in a 12-step program is we help each other. 12 steps says, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry the message to the addict or alcoholic who still suffered and practice these principles in all our affairs.
Yes.
And so all of our affairs, to me, begins at home where I live.
Mm-hmm.
You see, how do I treat my wife? My daughter's looking. My son's watching. My father never told me that he loved me. He never hugged me. And my father was 54 years old when he had me. He married a woman who was my mother, who was 33 years younger than he was. Can you imagine that? Not only did he rob the cradle, he went to the crib. I think that's the first time I ever said that. All right. And so when my father was born in 1890, that was 25 years after the Emancipation Proclamation, after slavery. He was raised by a former slave. So I had to look at, his upbringing. His father probably slapped him.
Mm-hmm.
His father probably whipped him with maybe a bullwhip. I don't know. So men that age just didn't show love. So I showed my children love. I hugged them. I kissed them. I read them bedtime stories. I taught them how to pray. And I think that's made a difference. We've got about 4 minutes left. There's some persons out there who are listening. Some men out there who are listening. Give them some hope, Gary.
The hope is recovery is a transformation of thinking and ideas. You know what I mean? And real quick, this is about men in recovery. I'm gonna share this quick story. This happened today. My wife and I are supposed to go with a couple tomorrow and have lunch. So I told my wife, we're gonna go to a movie. The young man we're going to lunch with, he called me and said he's going to a mall tomorrow after lunch. He's gonna drop his wife off and go to the mall. Do I want to go? I said, let me talk to my wife. This is a man in recovery. I had a conversation with my wife and explained to her what he wanted to do and what she think I should do. And she said, no, let's stay with the plan. Let's go to lunch, and then you and I are going to go to a movie. Look, before recovery, I would think that's a sucker move.
Really?
But it's not a sucker move. That's a man in recovery move.
That's right. Wonderful. Nicole, give some men out there some hope.
Well, recovery is life-changing, and everyone around you will see it, and all it takes is a little willingness to give it a shot.
Yes. 12-step program. A 12-step program is good for anybody. Anybody. Any addiction. You can have a gambling addiction, a money spending, shopping addiction, a shoes addiction, a sexual addiction. You could have a running your mouth addiction. Really, some people need to just shut up and close their mouth because they talk too much. They think they know.
Diarrhea of the mouth.
What did you say?
Diarrhea of the mouth.
Yeah, that's right. Well, listen, Gary, I want to thank you for flying in from Baltimore, being with us today. Thank you so much for catching the bus, Nicole, and coming today. I'm just kidding. She lives somewhere near downtown, but I'm out here on the south side where most of the African Americans live. But anyhow,
I'm on the south side with you now.
Oh, you do? Oh, good. Okay. So I want to thank you all for being here with us. And don't forget, those of you all who are listening, if you want to help us to minister, you want to help us with our outreach, please send us a donation. You can email me at info@hopealiveoutreach.org. info@hopealiveoutreach.org. If it's something that you'd like to hear on our broadcast, we broadcast every first Wednesday in the month. I really would like to do it more often than that. but send me an email at info@hopealiveoutreach.org. And I want to thank everybody who commented today. I'm Dr. Jordan. And remember, no matter what's going on with you today, there is hope for you. I'm the Hope Doctor. Have a great day.